Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Station was the heart of galactic government, a metal city floating in space that housed representatives from hundreds of different alien species. After 50 years of waiting, humanity was finally getting their chance to join the Galactic Council as full members. The human diplomatic vessel Terran Hope docked with a soft bump that Jake barely felt through the ship's hull. He straightened his dress uniform and checked his appearance one last time. Today would change everything for the human race, or so he hoped. Admiral Lisa Carter walked up beside him. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen more of the galaxy than most humans ever would. She had spent the last 20 years building relationships with alien diplomats, learning their customs and proving that humans could be trusted. "Ready for this, Captain?" she asked. Jake nodded. "As ready as we'll ever be, Admiral. Do you think they'll approve our application?" Lisa's expression was hard to read. "We've done everything they asked. We've followed every rule, helped with their wars, shared our medical knowledge, and kept the peace in our sector of space. We've earned this." Dr. Alex Turner joined them at the window. He was humanity's leading expert on alien biology and had written most of the medical treaties that had made humans valuable to the galactic community. His research had saved millions of alien lives over the past decades. "The Zenthari delegation arrived an hour ago," he said. "Their ship is 3 times the size of ours. They're making a statement." Commander Kate Sullivan, the military representative on their team, snorted. "Let them show off. We're not here to measure ships. We're here to prove we belong." The 4 humans made their way through the station's corridors toward the council chambers. The halls were filled with creatures that still amazed Jake, even after years of space travel. The Zenthari were tall, insect-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes. They wore elaborate ceremonial armor that clicked as they walked. The Kelvani looked almost like walking crystals, their bodies made of some kind of living mineral that caught and reflected light. The Vorthak were the strangest of all, floating energy beings that appeared as shifting clouds of light inside, environmental suits. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in circles that rose up like a stadium. Each species had their own section with environmental controls suited to their needs. The human delegation was seated in a small section near the back, a reminder of their low status in galactic politics. The session began with the usual ceremonies. Each major species gave formal greetings in their own languages, which were translated by the station's computer systems. Finally, the council leader, an ancient Vorthak named Zeth Moore, called for the human application to be presented. Admiral. Carter stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Her voice carried clearly through the translation systems as she began to speak. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," she said, "I stand before you today to request full membership for the human species. For 50 years, we have served this council faithfully. We have provided medical aid to 47 different species. Our doctors have developed treatments for diseases that were killing millions. Our engineers have helped build stations and ships throughout the galaxy. Our peacekeepers have maintained order in the frontier sectors without a single incident of unnecessary violence." She activated a holographic display that showed charts and statistics. The numbers were impressive. Human contributions to galactic society had grown every year. They had prevented 3 wars through careful diplomacy. Their agricultural techniques had ended famines on a dozen worlds. "We have proven our value and our commitment to galactic peace," Carter continued. "We ask only for the chance to participate fully in the decisions that affect all our species." When she finished, the chamber was quiet for a moment. Then the questions began. Ambassador Veltar of the Zenthari Empire spoke first. His voice had the clicking, chittering quality of his species, but the translator made his words clear. The humans have indeed been useful. Their medical knowledge is crude but effective. Their military serves adequately as peacekeepers. However, usefulness is not the same as worthiness. The Council requires more than mere competence. Jake felt his jaw clench, but he kept his expression neutral. The Zenthari had a way of making compliments sound like insults. The Kelvani representative, whose crystalline body chimed softly when she moved, was next. The human species shows promise in trade and engineering, yet they remain bound to their single world of origin. They lack the broad perspective that comes from true galactic citizenship. The most cutting comments came from the Vorthak delegate, whose words seemed to echo inside everyone's head rather than coming through the speakers. The humans are passionate. This serves them well in their roles as soldiers and healers. But passion can become violence. Their emotional nature makes them unsuitable for the careful deliberation that council membership requires. One by one, the major species found reasons why humanity wasn't ready. They praised human contributions while explaining why those contributions weren't enough. They acknowledged human achievements while dismissing human potential. Dr. Turner was allowed to present evidence of human medical advances. He showed how human doctors had learned to treat 17 different alien physiologies, something no other species had attempted. The council listened politely and thanked him for the information. Commander Sullivan presented humanity's peacekeeping record. In 30 years of frontier duty, human forces had not lost a single civilian under their protection. They had resolved conflicts through negotiation in 90% of cases. When violence was necessary, it was swift and decisive, ending threats, without unnecessary casualties. Again, the council listened politely. Again, they found reasons why this wasn't enough. The final vote was not even close. The motion to grant humanity full council membership was defeated by a margin of more than 3-1. Instead, humanity was granted probationary species status for another century. They could continue to serve the council in their current roles, but they would have no voice in galactic decisions. As the session ended and the alien delegates filed out, Jake felt a mixture of anger and disappointment that he struggled to contain. 50 years of service, 50 years of proving themselves, and it still wasn't enough. Admiral Carter's face was stone as she gathered her materials. "Well," she said quietly, "now we know where we stand." Dr. Turner shook his head. "All those lives we've saved, all the work we've done, and they still see us as useful pets." Commander Sullivan was less diplomatic. "They don't want partners. They want servants who are grateful for the privilege of serving." Jake looked around, the nearly empty chamber. The few remaining aliens were already deep in conversations that humanity was not invited to join. They had their answer. The question now was what humanity would do with it. As they walked back to their ship, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. They had come here believing that fairness and merit would be rewarded. They were leaving with the knowledge that in galactic politics, fairness was whatever the powerful said it was. The Terran Hope undocked from Nexus Station and began the long journey back to Earth. Jake stood at the same window where he had watched their approach. But now he was watching the station shrink into the distance. Behind them, the galactic powers continued their ancient games of dominance and submission. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. Captain Ben Rodriguez stared at the communication screen in disbelief. The message from New Haven Colony had cut off in the middle of a routine supply request 3 days ago. Since then, nothing but silence from the agricultural world that housed 50,000 human settlers. The rescue ship Earth's Grace dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Ben immediately ordered his crew to begin scanning for signs of life on the planet's surface. What they found made his blood run cold. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sam Davis from the sensor station. "I'm reading massive energy signatures on the surface. Looks like weapons fire, but it's already stopped. No active signals from any of the colony settlements." Ben felt a knot forming in his stomach. New Haven was one of humanity's most successful agricultural colonies. The settlers there were families, scientists, and farmers who had never caused trouble for anyone. They had been growing food crops that fed dozens of human settlements throughout the frontier. "Any ships in the system?" Ben asked. "Negative, sir. Whatever happened here, they're gone now." Ben ordered the ship to move closer to the planet. As they approached, the scope of the disaster became clear. From orbit, they could see that the main settlement had been completely destroyed. Buildings were reduced to smoking ruins. The agricultural fields that had taken years to establish were burned wastelands. "Take us down," Ben ordered. "Landing party of 12, full environmental suits and weapons. I want medical personnel and security." Dr. Sarah Blake, the ship's chief medical officer, was among the first to set foot on New Haven's surface. What she found would haunt her for the rest of her life. The colonists had not died in battle. They had been executed. Bodies lay in neat rows in what had been the town square. Men, women, and children, all shot with precise energy weapons at close range. The execution had been systematic and thorough. No one had been spared. Colonel Ryan Mitchell, who had come aboard the Earth's Grace as a military observer, knelt beside one of the bodies. He was a veteran of the frontier wars and had seen his share of violence, but this was different. "This wasn't a raid," he said grimly. "This was a deliberate massacre. Look at the positioning of the bodies. They were lined up and shot execution style." Ben walked through the ruins of the settlement trying to understand what had happened. The colonists had been peaceful farmers. They had no military installations, no strategic resources, nothing that should have made them targets. It was Dr. Blake who found the first clue. In the ruins of the colony's administrative building, she discovered the settlement's security recordings. The storage system had been damaged, but not completely destroyed. "Captain, you need to see this," she called. The recording was damaged and fragmented, but enough remained to tell the story. Xanthari military vessels had arrived without warning. The colonists had tried to surrender immediately, broadcasting messages of peaceful intent in perfect Xanthari language. The aliens had ignored the surrender attempts. They had rounded up every human in the settlement and forced them into the town square. The recording showed children crying and clinging to their parents as Xanthari soldiers pushed them into lines. Then came the voice of the Xanthari commander, speaking in his own language, but with subtitles provided by the colony's translation system. Ben felt sick as he read the words. "These humans have violated sacred mining rights by harvesting forbidden crystals. The penalty for this crime is death. Let this serve as an example to others who would steal from the Empire." Colonel Mitchell paused the recording. "Forbidden crystals? What is he talking about?" Dr. Blake checked the colony's geological surveys. "They're talking about silicon compounds. Basic silicon that the colonists were using to make computer components and building materials. It's one of the most common elements in the universe. The recording continued. The Xanthari commander gave a speech about the superiority of his species and the need to punish human arrogance. Then the executions began. What made it worse was that several of the colonists spoke to their killers in fluent Xanthari, begging for mercy, explaining that they had no idea they were doing anything wrong. The children cried for their parents in both human languages and Xanthari. The aliens showed no emotion as they systematically murdered every person in the settlement. Ben had to leave the building. The air recycling system in his suit couldn't keep up with his rapid breathing. Outside, Colonel Mitchell was coordinating with his security team to search the rest of the settlement. "Anything else?" Ben asked when he could speak again. "We found evidence that this has happened before," Mitchell replied. The colonists had received warnings about other settlements going dark. They sent messages to Earth requesting protection, but those requests were never answered. Dr. Blake emerged from another building carrying a data storage device. "I found the colony's communication logs. They had been reporting strange activity in this sector for months. Ships that wouldn't identify themselves, unauthorized scans of human settlements, requests for information about human mining operations." She activated the device and showed them the data. "Captain, this wasn't random. The Xanthari have been systematically surveying human colonies for over a year. New Haven was just the latest target." Colonel Mitchell pulled up his own files on his portable computer. "I've been tracking unusual incidents in human space for the past 5 years. Settlements that went dark, supply ships that disappeared, colonies that reported technical difficulties, and then stopped communicating." He showed them a star map with dozens of red markers. 17 human settlements have gone silent under suspicious circumstances every time the Galactic Council ruled the incidents as either accidents or justified interventions for treaty violations. Ben stared at the map. 17 settlements meant hundreds of thousands of dead humans. Why didn't anyone connect these incidents before? Because they were spread out over 5 years and across hundreds of light years, Mitchell explained. Each one was investigated separately. The paperwork always came back clean. Technical failures, mineral rights disputes, violations of sacred sites, always a legal justification. Dr. Blake was running her scanner over the execution site. "Captain, I'm detecting traces of Xanthari ceremonial incense. This wasn't just a military operation. It was a religious ceremony for them." The implications hit Ben like a physical blow. The Xanthari hadn't just killed the colonists. They had made it into a religious ritual, a sacred duty to cleanse the galaxy of human contamination. As the rescue team completed their investigation, the picture became clear. New Haven had been destroyed not because of anything the colonists had done, but because they were human. The sacred crystals were an excuse. The treaty violations were legal fiction. The Xanthari, and likely other galactic powers, were testing humanity's response. They were seeing how many humans they could kill before there were consequences. Colonel Mitchell uploaded all the evidence to the ship's communication system. "This data needs to reach Earth immediately. Military command needs to see what's really happening out here." Ben approved the transmission. As the data packets raced toward Earth through the faster-than-light communication network, he looked up at the alien stars above New Haven. For 50 years, humanity had played by galactic rules. They had accepted insults, followed unfair laws, and trusted in alien justice. They had believed that good behavior would eventually be rewarded with respect and equality. The evidence spread across the burned ground of New Haven proved that trust had been misplaced. The galactic powers didn't see humans as potential equals. They saw them as useful animals that could be disposed of when convenient. As the Earth's grace lifted off from the dead world, Ben made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. He opened a communication channel to Earth Military Command. "This is Captain Rodriguez reporting from New Haven Colony," he said. "The settlement has been completely destroyed by Xanthari forces. All 50,000 colonists are dead. This was not a random attack. This was systematic genocide, disguised as law enforcement." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Request. Immediate escalation to the highest levels of government. The diplomatic approach has failed. We need to discuss other options." The message raced across space toward Earth, carrying with it the evidence that would change everything. Behind them, New Haven burned under alien stars, a monument to the cost of trusting in the fairness of those who saw mercy as weakness. The galaxy was about to learn that humans could be very different when they stopped playing by other people's rules. General Paul Stevens looked around the conference room at Luna Command Base and saw something that had never existed before in human history: complete unity. Representatives from every nation on Earth, every major corporation, every military branch, and every political faction sat at the same table with a single purpose. The evidence from New Haven had reached Earth 3 days ago. Within hours, every human government had declared a state of species emergency. Ancient rivalries and political differences were set aside as humanity faced the reality that they were being systematically murdered by aliens who saw them as expendable. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Stevens began, "we are here to discuss humanity's response to what can only be called attempted genocide. The evidence is clear. Over the past 5 years, 17 human settlements have been destroyed by various alien forces. The total death count is approaching 500,000 people." Commander Nina Foster activated the holographic display in the center of the room. The star map showed the locations of destroyed settlements, patterns of alien ship movements, and communication intercepts that painted a disturbing picture. "The attacks have been coordinated," she explained. "Different alien species taking turns, but always with the same goal: test human responses while maintaining legal cover through the Galactic Council." President Sarah Martinez of the North American Federation spoke first. "What are our options, General? The diplomatic approach has clearly failed." General Stevens nodded to Lieutenant Colonel Amy Chen, who stood and walked to the display controls. "Before we discuss options, everyone in this room needs to understand something that has been classified at the highest levels for 50 years. She pressed a series of buttons, and the display changed to show detailed technical specifications of human ships, weapons, and military installations throughout the galaxy. For the past 5 decades, humanity has been deliberately hiding our true capabilities from the galactic community. Every human ship that the aliens think is a merchant vessel is actually a fully armed warship. Every mining station is a military fortress. Every agricultural colony has underground bunkers with enough weapons to outfit a division of soldiers. The room erupted in surprised voices. Even most of the military representatives hadn't known the full scope of the deception. Lieutenant Colonel Chen continued. "Project Deathworld was initiated the day humans first made contact with alien species. Our scientists and military planners realized immediately that we were dealing with civilizations that were both more advanced and more numerous than us. Our only advantage was that they underestimated us." She changed the display to show comparative military strength. "The Xanthari Empire has approximately 40,000 warships. The Kelvani Trade Federation has 60,000. The Vorthak Collective has 20,000. Together, The major galactic powers control over 200,000 military vessels. General Stevens took over the presentation. Humanity has been building ships in secret for 50 years. Our official fleet consists of about 2,000 vessels. Our actual fleet consists of nearly 15,000 fully armed warships, all disguised as civilian craft. Dr. Alex Turner, who had been part of the diplomatic mission just months earlier, shook his head in amazement. How did we keep this secret for so long? Because aliens don't think like humans, Lieutenant Colonel Chen explained. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and direct confrontation. The idea of deception on this scale simply doesn't occur to them. When they see a ship carrying agricultural equipment, they assume it's a farming vessel. They don't look for the hidden weapon systems. She activated another display showing psychological profiles of the major alien species. The Zenthari are hive-minded. They can't comprehend individual initiative or creative problem-solving. The Kelvani are purely logical. They assume everyone else operates on pure logic as well. The Vorthak are telepathic, but only within their own species. They can't read human minds, and they don't understand human emotional complexity. General Stevens addressed the room. For 50 years, we've been playing the role of harmless newcomers while building the infrastructure for total war. Every human in space has been trained in combat techniques. Every civilian facility has military-grade defenses. Every merchant captain knows how to fight a battle. President Chen of the Asian Alliance asked the obvious question. What about the other alien species, the ones who aren't part of the major powers? Commander Foster brought up new data. Intelligence indicates that many smaller species are also victims of the galactic power structure. The Altarians are enslaved by Zenthari agricultural corporations. The Zerathi crystal beings are exploited by Kelvani mining operations. Dozens of other species are kept as client states or outright slaves. This gives us potential allies, observed Prime Minister Johnson of the European Federation. Species who have their own reasons to want the current system changed. General Stevens nodded. That's exactly what we're thinking. Humanity's advantage isn't just our hidden military strength, it's our ability to adapt, to learn, and to work with others as equals rather than subjects. Lieutenant Colonel Chen activated the final display, showing detailed battle plans that had been developed over decades. Operation Awakening has 3 phases. Phase 1. Demonstrate that human retaliation is swift and precise. Phase 2. Liberate oppressed species and build alliances. Phase 3. Establish a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than domination. The plans were incredibly detailed. Human agents had been placed throughout galactic space, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. Supply depots had been established in hidden locations. Communication networks had been built that bypassed official galactic systems. "How long have you been planning this?" asked General Kim of the African Union. "Since the day we first learned that the galaxy operates on a system of might makes right," General Stevens replied. "We hoped we would never need these plans. The diplomatic approach was our first choice. But we always prepared for the possibility that aliens would see our peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited." Dr. Sarah Blake, who had witnessed the massacre at New Haven, spoke up. "What about the moral implications? Are we talking about becoming the very thing we oppose?" Lieutenant Colonel Chen shook her head. "The difference is in the goal. The current galactic powers use violence to maintain dominance. We plan to use violence to establish justice. Once the shooting stops, we want a galaxy where all species are treated as equals." General Stevens called for a vote. "The question before us is simple. Do we continue to accept systematic genocide while hoping for diplomatic solutions? Or do we defend ourselves and other innocent species by force? The vote was unanimous. Every representative from every nation and organization voted to authorize Operation Awakening. As the meeting concluded, General Stevens looked out the window at Earth below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, but he knew that was about to change. For 50 years, Earth had been the home of a species that appeared harmless to the rest of the galaxy. That was about to end. Commander Foster approached him as the other representatives filed out. "General, there's one thing we haven't discussed. Once we start this, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what humans are really capable of." General Stevens nodded grimly. "Good. Let them know. For 50 years, we've been patient, reasonable, and merciful. It's gotten us nothing but dead colonies and condescension from species that think of us as useful animals." He turned away from the window and walked toward the command center where the orders for Operation Awakening would be transmitted to human forces throughout the galaxy. "It's time the galaxy learned that Deathworlders don't just survive harsh conditions," he said. "We thrive in them. And when we stop holding back, even space itself becomes a harsh condition for our enemies." The message went out on encrypted channels to every human commander in space. The diplomatic phase of human-galactic relations was over. The war phase was about to begin. But it wouldn't be the kind of war the galaxy expected. Humans had learned to fight from their enemies, but they had also learned to fight as themselves. The combination would prove devastating. The galaxy had pushed the wrong species too far. Now they were going to learn why evolution had made humans the way they were. Agent Carlos Martinez floated in the maintenance tunnel of Zenthari military outpost Kethvar, one of the Empire's most important command centers. Getting inside had been surprisingly easy once he understood how Zenthari psychology worked. The vast, insect-like aliens were brilliant at organization and overwhelming force, but they had a critical weakness. They couldn't think like individuals. Their hive mind evolution made them perfect for coordinated attacks, but terrible at recognizing deception from a single creative opponent. Carlos had approached the station in a damaged human cargo ship, broadcasting distress signals and claiming to be a defector. The Zenthari commander, believing that all humans thought alike, assumed that Carlos represented a faction of humans ready to surrender. The interrogation had been almost comical. The Zenthari kept asking Carlos to explain human, hive decisions, and collective surrender protocols. When Carlos explained that humans made individual choices, the aliens interpreted this as evidence of mental defects that made him perfect for slave labor. Within 6 hours, Carlos had been assigned to maintenance duties with full access to the station's infrastructure. The Zenthari guards ignored him completely, assuming that a mentally defective human couldn't possibly understand their technology well enough to cause problems. They were wrong. Carlos slipped through the ventilation system toward the station's main computer core. Over the past 2 days, he had been mapping the entire facility and learning how Zenthari technology worked. The aliens were advanced, but their systems were designed for hive mind users. They had no security against individual creativity. The computer core was a massive crystalline structure that hummed with energy. Carlos plugged his portable interface into one of the maintenance ports and began his work. He wasn't going to hack the system in any conventional sense. Instead, he was going to convince it to hack itself. Zenthari artificial intelligence was based on collective decision-making algorithms. The computers made choices by simulating millions of individual Zenthari minds working together. Carlos had spent weeks learning how to speak to these systems in their own language. "Primary core," he said through the interface, using perfect Zenthari protocol language. "This unit requests confirmation of current operational status." "All systems nominal," the computer replied in its clicking, chittering voice. "Maintenance worker designation ZH7743. Your clearance level does not permit core system queries." "Understood," Carlos replied. "This unit observes potential inefficiencies in current configuration. Request permission to optimize." This was the key moment. The Zenthari AI was programmed to constantly improve efficiency, but it could only do so through collective consultation. Carlos was offering to provide that consultation service. "Describe observed inefficiencies," the computer requested. Carlos began to feed the AI a series of logical paradoxes disguised as efficiency reports. The computer's attempts to resolve these paradoxes created cascading errors throughout its decision-making processes. Within minutes, the AI was spending so much processing power trying to solve Carlos's fake problems that it had no resources left for actual station operations. "System optimization requires temporary shutdown of non-essential functions," the computer announced, implementing efficiency protocols. Throughout the station, lights went out. Life support systems switched to minimum power. Communication arrays went offline. Navigation systems shut down. The computer was optimizing itself into complete dysfunction. Captain Steve Parker, waiting in the human rescue fleet 3 light hours away, received Carlos's signal exactly on schedule. The entire Zenthari command station had gone dark. "All ships, begin recovery operations," Parker ordered. "Remember, we want prisoners, not casualties. The goal is to demonstrate capability, not cruelty." The human fleet moved toward the disabled. Zenthari installations throughout the system. There were 6 military bases, 2 supply depots, and a major communications hub. All of them had gone offline simultaneously as their AI systems tried to resolve the efficiency paradoxes Carlos had introduced. Parker's ship, the Earth's Mercy, approached the main station where thousands of Zenthari troops were now stranded, without life support or communications. The aliens were attempting to manually restart their systems, but their hive mind training made them slow to adapt to unexpected situations. "Open a channel to the station," Parker ordered. His message was broadcast on emergency frequencies in perfect Zenthari language. "Zenthari forces, this is Captain Parker of the human fleet. Your station has been disabled through nonviolent means. We are prepared to provide emergency life support while you consider your situation." The response came from the station commander, his voice filled with confusion and disbelief. "Human vessel, explain the nature of your attack. Our systems show no evidence of weapons fire or explosive damage." "No attack was made," Parker replied truthfully. "Your systems were convinced to optimize themselves into shutdown. This is what mercy looks like. Your crews are alive and unharmed. Next time, there might not be any mercy." The implications hit the Zenthari commander immediately. If humans could disable their most secure military installations without firing a shot, what else could they do? The psychological impact was devastating. Similar scenes played out across 8 star systems as human agents activated sleeper protocols they had been building for years. Agent Martinez wasn't the only human who had infiltrated alien installations. Dozens of operatives had been placed throughout Zenthari space, all waiting for this moment. The results were spectacular. 37 major military installations went offline simultaneously. Supply convoys found themselves stranded when their navigation systems stopped working. Communication networks collapsed as AI systems became convinced they needed to optimize their efficiency by shutting down. But the most important target was the Zenthari Imperial Fleet, their pride and joy consisting of 10,000 warships. Admiral Keth Tar was in the middle of planning humanity's destruction when every ship in his fleet suddenly lost power. The Admiral's flagship received a personal message from Agent Sarah Kim, who had been working as a translator in the fleet's communication center for 3 years. "Admiral Keth Tar," her message said. "This is Agent Kim of Human Intelligence. Your fleet has been disabled by non-lethal means. Your crews are alive and safe. This demonstration is intended to show you what humans can accomplish when we stop pretending to be harmless." The message continued with a detailed explanation of how human agents had infiltrated every level of Zenthari society over the past 50 years. Translators, maintenance workers, medical staff, even some of the Admiral's own advisors had been human operatives. "We learned your languages, studied your psychology, and understood your weaknesses," the message explained. "We did this while you were deciding whether we were worthy of basic respect. You have your answer now." The psychological warfare was more effective than any conventional attack could have been. The Zenthari had built their empire on the belief that superior numbers and technology made them invincible. Discovering that they had been thoroughly infiltrated by a species they considered inferior shattered their confidence. Captain Parker coordinated the recovery efforts across multiple systems. Human ships appeared at every disabled installation, offering emergency supplies and medical aid to stranded alien crews. The message was clear. Humans were capable of destruction, but they chose mercy. The broadcasts that went out to the galaxy were simple and direct. Humanity had disabled the most powerful military force in known space without killing a single alien. They had demonstrated capabilities that no one had suspected, but they had used those capabilities to preserve life rather than take it. Agent Martinez completed his mission by walking directly to the station commander's office. The Zenthari officer was surrounded by his staff, all of them staring at displays showing the systematic failure of their technology. "Commander," Carlos said in perfect Zenthari, "I am Agent Martinez of Human Intelligence. I have been on your station for 3 days. Your security never detected me because you assumed humans were too primitive to understand your systems." The commander looked at him with compound eyes that showed a mixture of fear and confusion. "How is this possible? Our screening protocols are perfect." "Your protocols are designed to detect threats that think like Zenthari," Carlos explained. "They don't work against threats that think like humans. This is the first lesson in your education about why underestimating other species is dangerous." Carlos transmitted a data packet to the commander's personal computer. "This contains detailed information about how we disabled your systems. Study it carefully. Share it with your superiors. Make sure they understand that this was the gentle demonstration." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Commander, the next time your empire decides to massacre human civilians, remember that we know where every one of your installations is located. We know how your technology works, and we know how to turn your own systems against you." Agent Martinez walked out of the commander's office and made his way to the docking bay where a human ship was waiting to extract him. Behind him, the Zenthari command staff stared at their dead screens and tried to understand how their perfect military machine had been defeated. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 3,000-year history. Representatives from every major species had demanded immediate action after the systematic shutdown of Zenthari military installations. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that shattered every assumption about galactic power balance. Ambassador Helen Brooks walked into the council chamber with a confidence that hadn't been there during her species' previous appearance. The human delegation was no longer seated in the back corner with the other minor species. Today, they occupied a central position that reflected their new status as a significant galactic power. The Xanthari delegation was visibly shaken. Ambassador Veltar's usual arrogant posture had been replaced by nervous clicking as his arms fidgeted with his ceremonial armor. The reports from his military commanders had been humiliating. 37 installations disabled by infiltrators they never detected. An entire fleet rendered helpless by creative sabotage. The Kelvani representative, her crystalline body chiming with agitation, spoke first. The human actions represent an unprecedented violation of galactic law. Covert infiltration of sovereign, military installations is an act of war. Ambassador Brooks stood calmly and activated her presentation system. Honored representatives, let me clarify the human position on galactic law. For 50 years, we followed every rule, respected every treaty, and sought peaceful resolution to every conflict. In return, 17 human settlements were destroyed and 500,000 of our people were murdered. The holographic display showed the evidence from New Haven and the other destroyed colonies. Even the council members who had dismissed human complaints before couldn't ignore the systematic nature of the attacks. The Galactic Council ruled each of these massacres as legal interventions. Brooks continued. Sacred site violations, mineral rights disputes, treaty infractions, always a legal justification for genocide. We learned from your example. She changed the display to show the Xanthari military installations that had been disabled. Every action we took was technically legal under galactic law. We did not fire weapons, we did not destroy property, we did not harm personnel. We simply convinced artificial intelligence systems to optimize their efficiency. No laws were broken. The Vorthak representative's energy form flickered with anger as his telepathic voice echoed in everyone's mind. Legal technicalities cannot disguise the aggression of your actions. You have shown hostility toward established galactic order. Established galactic disorder, Brooks corrected. An order based on the strong preying on the weak, where justice is whatever the powerful say it is. Humanity rejects this system. She activated another display showing intelligence reports that made several alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. We know about the Altarian slave colonies that supply Xanthari agricultural corporations. We know about the Zerathi, mining operations where Kelvani overseers work entire populations to death. We know about the dozens of species that exist only to serve the major powers. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. For millennia, the galactic powers had maintained their dominance through systematic oppression disguised as legal civilization. The age of that system is ending, Brooks announced. Humanity offers a new approach. Cooperation between equals rather than domination by the strong. At that moment, Commander Tony Walsh was demonstrating exactly what that new approach looked like at the Battle of Vega Prime. The Xanthari had sent a retaliatory fleet to attack human shipping lanes, expecting a conventional space battle. They got something entirely different. Walsh's fleet consisted of ships that had been disguised as merchant vessels for decades. As the Xanthari warships approached, the human cargo ships began to transform. Hull panels slid away to reveal weapon systems. Cargo containers detached to become independent fighter craft. Mining equipment reconfigured itself into defensive barriers. The Zenthari Admiral, Kethmore, watched in disbelief as his enemy's fleet tripled in size and firepower in a matter of minutes. Impossible, he clicked over the communication channel. Our intelligence shows no human military installations in this sector. Your intelligence is 50 years out of date, Walsh replied. Every human presence in space has military capability. We've been building and training while you've been dismissing us as harmless farmers. The battle that followed redefined space combat doctrine. The Zenthari fought with overwhelming force and direct assault tactics that had served them for centuries. The humans fought with adaptation, creativity, and psychological warfare that confused and demoralized their opponents. Human ships used environmental advantages, asteroid fields, and solar radiation in ways the Zenthari had never considered. When Zenthari formations advanced, human vessels scattered and regrouped in patterns that seemed random but created perfect ambush opportunities. Most devastating was the psychological component. Human communication specialists broadcast messages, designed specifically for Zenthari hive mind psychology. They created cognitive conflicts that disrupted the aliens' ability to coordinate their attacks. Zenthari fleet, the human messages said. Your commanders are leading you into unnecessary death. Your hive queen has been infiltrated by human agents. Your orders may be compromised. Verify all commands through individual initiative. The suggestion that individual initiative was necessary created chaos in the Zenthari ranks. Their hive mind conditioning made independent thought nearly impossible, but the doubt planted by human psychological warfare made collective thought unreliable. Within hours, the Zenthari fleet was in complete disarray. Ships broke formation as individual commanders tried to think for themselves. Communication networks became clogged with verification requests. The disciplined military machine became a confused mob. Commander Walsh had won the battle without destroying a single enemy ship. Instead, he had convinced the enemy to defeat themselves. Back in the council chamber, news of the victory at Vega Prime was causing panic among the galactic powers. The Kelvani delegate demanded immediate military intervention to stop human expansion. Ambassador Brooks smiled coldly. You're welcome to try. But consider this. Every action you've seen so far has been a demonstration. We've been showing you what we can do when we're being gentle. She activated a final display that showed human military capabilities that had remained hidden even after recent revelations. The numbers were staggering. Hidden shipyards, secret research facilities, weapon systems that alien science couldn't explain. For 50 years you treated us as useful primitives, Brooks said. You had no idea that we were studying every aspect of your civilizations. We learned your languages, your psychology, your technology, and your weaknesses. We did this while you were debating whether we deserved basic rights. The Zenthari ambassador finally found his voice. What do you want from us? Justice, Brooks replied simply. An end to the systematic oppression of weaker species. A new galactic order based on mutual respect rather than might makes right. The choice is yours. Adapt to the new reality or be swept aside by it. The session ended in chaos as delegates rushed to contact their home governments. The galactic balance of power had shifted overnight, and no one was sure what would happen next. But in the human territories, representatives from dozens of oppressed species were already making contact. The Altarians, enslaved for centuries, sent secret messages requesting liberation. The Zerathi, worked to death in crystal mines, offered alliance in exchange for freedom. Humanity had kept its promise. They were offering cooperation to those who wanted it, and consequences to those who didn't. The galaxy was about to learn that humans could be very effective teachers when they stopped pretending to be students. The old order was crumbling, and from its ashes, something new was beginning to emerge. Something based on the radical idea that all intelligent species deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. The revolution had begun, and it was being led by the species that everyone had underestimated. Captain Greg Thompson watched through the viewport of his ship as the Altarian homeworld grew larger ahead of them. The planet was beautiful, covered in vast forests and crystal-clear lakes, but intelligence reports painted a different picture. For 300 years, the gentle plant-like Altarians had been enslaved by Zenthari agricultural corporations. The Liberation Fleet consisted of 20 human vessels disguised as a routine trade convoy. Their target wasn't military installations or government buildings. Instead, they were going after something much more important: the biological control systems that kept an entire species in bondage. Dr. Michelle Davis, humanity's leading expert in xenobiology, studied the final intelligence reports in her laboratory aboard Thompson's flagship. The Zenthari use a modified virus to keep the Altarians docile, she explained to the mission briefing. It suppresses their natural resistance to commands and makes them physically dependent on Zenthari-manufactured nutrients. Major Kevin Brown, the mission's adaptive warfare specialist, nodded grimly. Biological slavery. They turned an entire species into living tools. Not anymore, Dr. Davis replied, holding up a small container of modified bacteria. We've engineered a counteragent that will neutralize the control virus while making the planet's atmosphere toxic to Zenthari physiology. Non-lethal to them, but they won't be able to survive on the surface. Captain Thompson activated the ship's communication system. All vessels, begin Phase 1. Deploy atmospheric modification packages. Throughout the Altarian system, human ships released clouds of engineered bacteria into the planet's atmosphere. The microorganisms were designed to spread rapidly and break down the chemical compounds that allowed Zenthari to breathe the planet's air. The Zenthari overseers on the surface had no idea what was happening until their environmental suits began, triggering contamination alarms. Within hours, every Zenthari on the planet was forced to evacuate to orbital stations or face suffocation. But the real revolution was happening among the Altarians themselves. As the counter-virus spread through their population, centuries of artificial docility began to fade. For the first time in 300 years, Altarians were thinking clearly and feeling anger at their oppression. The transformation was remarkable. The Altarians, who had been forced to harvest crops for their masters, suddenly understood that they were slaves. Plants that had grown in perfect rows to feed alien mouths began to change as their caretakers redirected their growth toward Altarian nutritional needs. Captain Thompson received the first communication from the planet's surface 6 hours after. The liberation began. The voice was soft and musical, like wind through leaves, but it carried a strength that hadn't been heard in centuries. Human ships. This is Speaker Velthara of the Altarian people. We remember now. We remember freedom. We remember choice. How can we thank you for giving us back ourselves? No thanks needed, Thompson replied. We're offering you alliance, not charity. Your people have capabilities that could help free other enslaved species. The Altarians' natural abilities were extraordinary. They could communicate with plant life across vast distances, accelerate growth, and modify biological systems in ways that seemed almost magical. Under Zenthari control, these abilities had been used only for agriculture. Free Altarians could use them for so much more. Dr. Davis worked with Altarian bioengineers to develop new applications for their abilities. They created communication networks using modified tree roots that could carry messages across continents. They designed defensive plants that could detect and neutralize hostile organisms. Most importantly, they began working on liberation techniques for other biologically enslaved species. The Zenthari response was swift but ineffective. Admiral Kethvar arrived with a fleet of 40 warships, demanding the immediate return of stolen agricultural assets. He found a planet he could no longer approach, and a human fleet that was no longer pretending to be merchants. "Human Commander," the Admiral broadcast, "you have violated sacred property rights. The Altarians are livestock belonging to the Zenthari, agricultural collective. Return them immediately or face the consequences." Major Brown, now in command of the defense fleet, responded with a lesson in human psychological warfare. "Admiral, your livestock have something to say to you." The communication channel opened to broadcast Speaker Velthara's voice across the Zenthari fleet. Her words were spoken in perfect Zenthari, learned during centuries of forced servitude. "Admiral Kethvar, we are not your property. We never were. We remember now what you stole from us. Our minds, our freedom, our children who died in your fields. We choose to stand with the humans who gave us back our souls." The psychological impact on the Zenthari was devastating. Their entire agricultural empire was based on the belief that other species were naturally inferior and needed Zenthari guidance. Hearing their livestock speak as equals in their own language shattered that worldview. But Speaker Velthara wasn't finished. "To all Zenthari listening, know this. Every plant you have touched, every crop you have grown, every tree on every world you control carries our influence. We have been spreading seeds of change for 3 centuries, waiting for the day we could awaken them." Across Zenthari space, agricultural worlds began to rebel. Plants that had grown in perfect order for alien masters suddenly became chaotic and uncontrollable. Crops failed. Atmospheric processors clogged with unexpected vegetation. Orbital stations found their air recycling systems overrun with aggressive plant growth. The Altarians had been patient, but they had not been idle. For centuries, they had been subtly modifying every biological system they touched, preparing for a day of awakening that they had hoped would eventually come. Major Brown coordinated similar operations throughout the galaxy. Human liberation fleets arrived at oppressed worlds with precisely designed solutions for each species' specific form of bondage. The crystalline Zarathi had been enslaved through harmonic resonance weapons that shattered their bodies if they disobeyed. Human scientists developed counter-resonance fields that made the weapons useless while amplifying the Zarathi's natural ability to manipulate energy. The aquatic hydrants had been controlled through chemical additives in their water supplies. Human engineers helped them purify their oceans while providing defensive technologies that could operate in underwater environments. Each liberation followed the same pattern. Identify the specific method of control, develop a targeted countermeasure, and then help the freed species weaponize their natural abilities against their former oppressors. Dr. Davis coordinated the scientific efforts from a mobile laboratory that traveled between liberated worlds. The old galactic powers made a fundamental error, she explained to her research team. They assumed that controlling other species meant suppressing their abilities. They never considered that those abilities could be turned against them. The liberation campaigns weren't just military operations. They were demonstrations of a completely different approach to galactic civilization. Instead of conquering and controlling other species, humans were freeing them and learning from them. The Altarians taught humans about biological engineering and ecological harmony. The Zarathi shared their knowledge of energy manipulation and crystal technology. The Hydrans provided insights into underwater exploration and pressure-resistant engineering. Each alliance made humanity stronger while weakening the traditional galactic powers. The Zenthari found their agricultural empire collapsing as liberated species turned their own creations against them. The Kelvani discovered that their mining operations were being sabotaged by the very species they had enslaved to work the mines. Captain Thompson received a priority message from Earth as his fleet prepared to move on to the next liberation target. General Stevens's image appeared on the communication screen with news that changed everything. Captain, intelligence reports indicate that the galactic powers are planning a coordinated response. They're putting aside their differences to form a united fleet aimed at Earth itself. They've decided that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to continue. Thompson smiled grimly. How long do we have? 6 months, maybe less. Every major species is contributing ships and troops. They're calling it the Final Solution Fleet. Then we'd better move faster, Thompson replied. How many more species? Can we liberate before they arrive? As many as possible. The more allies we have, the better our chances when they come for us. Thompson looked out at the Altarian homeworld, where millions of plant beings were experiencing freedom for the first time in centuries. Their gratitude was visible in the way their forests seemed to reach toward the human ships, as if trying to touch the vessels that had brought them liberation. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had expected, the old order of domination, and control was crumbling as species after species discovered that they didn't have to accept oppression as their natural state. But Thompson knew that the hardest battles were still ahead. The galactic powers had been caught off guard by humanity's capabilities, but they were adapting. When they came for Earth, they would come with everything they had. The question was whether humanity and their new allies would be ready for them. Admiral Chris Anderson stood on the command deck of the orbital defense station Terra Shield, watching the largest fleet in galactic history approach the Sol system. The Final Solution Fleet stretched across space like a moving constellation, with over 100,000 warships from every major galactic power united in a single purpose: the complete destruction of humanity. The Zenthari had contributed 40,000 ships and their most experienced commanders. The Kelvani brought 60,000 vessels equipped with the latest energy weapons. The Vorthak Collective added 20,000 ships with their devastating psychic warfare capabilities. Dozens of smaller species had been forced to contribute, ships and crews, to what their leaders called the preservation of galactic order. Earth's defenses looked pitiful in comparison. The planet was surrounded by a mix of human warships, converted merchant vessels, and defensive platforms that seemed inadequate to face such overwhelming force. Intelligence estimates suggested humanity could field perhaps 20,000 combat-capable ships. The attacking fleet's commander, Zenthari Supreme Admiral Velthok, had spent months planning what he called the Human Extinction Protocol. Every human world would be systematically sterilized. Every human ship would be hunted down and destroyed. The species that had dared to challenge galactic authority would be erased as an example to others. But Admiral Anderson knew something that Velthok didn't. The approaching fleet wasn't facing just humanity. They were facing the largest alliance of free species in galactic history. "Admiral," reported Captain Lisa Foster from the communications station. "We're receiving confirmation signals from all Allied fleets. They're in position and ready." Anderson nodded and activated the system-wide communication network. "All Allied forces, this is Admiral Anderson. Execute Operation Homecoming." Throughout the Sol system, space began to shimmer as cloaking fields deactivated. The apparent human fleet of 20,000 ships suddenly became a force of over 200,000 vessels as Allied fleets revealed themselves. The Altarians had converted their agricultural ships into biological warfare platforms capable of seeding hostile environments with aggressive plant life. The crystalline Zarathi had weaponized their energy manipulation abilities, turning their vessels into mobile power generators that could overload enemy systems. The aquatic Hydrons had developed pressure-based weapons that could crush enemy hulls from the inside. Dozens of other liberated species had contributed ships, crews, and technologies that the galactic powers had never bothered to understand. The enslaved had become allies, and their combined capabilities were beyond anything the traditional powers had imagined. Supreme Admiral Velthok watched his tactical displays in disbelief as enemy fleet strength multiplied by 10 in a matter of seconds. "This is impossible," he clicked to his staff. "Our intelligence showed no major alien presence in this system." "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting ship signatures from over 60 different species. Many of them are using technologies we've never encountered." The battle began not with weapons fire, but with Captain Maria Gonzalez demonstrating why human psychological warfare had become legendary. Her ship, the Righteous Fury, broadcast a message that reached every vessel in the attacking fleet. "Warriors of the galactic powers," her voice carried clearly through the translation systems. "You have come here to commit genocide against a species whose only crime was refusing to accept systematic oppression. Look around you. Look at the fleets surrounding you. Every ship you see represents a species that you enslaved, oppressed, or dismissed as inferior." The message continued as tactical displays throughout the attacking fleet began showing the true composition of the Allied forces. "The Altarians you used as agricultural slaves are here. The Zarathi you worked to death in crystal mines are here. The Hydrons you poisoned with industrial waste are here. Dozens of species you considered beneath notice are here." Captain Gonzalez's words were carefully crafted to create maximum psychological impact. "You are not facing humanity alone. You are facing everyone you ever wronged, united in a common cause. You came here to destroy the species that showed them freedom was possible. They came here to show you that freedom is inevitable." The psychological warfare was devastating. Troops throughout the attacking fleet began to question their mission as they realized they were fighting not just humans, but every species their empires had oppressed. The actual combat was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The traditional powers fought with conventional tactics, overwhelming firepower, superior numbers, and direct assault. The Allied forces fought with creativity, adaptation, and technologies that turned environmental factors into weapons. Major Kevin Brown coordinated the adaptive defense strategies from his command ship in the asteroid belt. Human vessels used the debris field as mobile cover, appearing and disappearing among the rocks like ancient pirates. When Zenthari formations pursued them, they found themselves facing Zarathi energy weapons that could turn asteroids into explosive projectiles. The Altarians demonstrated why enslaving biological specialists had been a mistake. Their ships released clouds of engineered organisms that consumed the hull plating of enemy vessels, making them vulnerable to pressure changes and energy weapons. Zenthari crews found their ships literally being eaten alive by aggressive bacteria. The hydrants showed why underestimating aquatic species was dangerous. Their pressure weapons could create implosion effects that crushed enemy ships from within. Kelvani commanders watched in horror as their crystalline vessels shattered under forces they couldn't detect or defend against. But the most devastating aspect of the battle was the sheer creativity of the Allied response. Every species contributed. Tactics and technologies that the galactic powers had never considered. The Alliance fought like a single organism with dozens of different capabilities, adapting to every enemy strategy faster than the traditional forces could respond. Admiral Anderson coordinated the overall strategy from his command post, but the real leadership came from the liberated species themselves. Speaker Velthara of the Altarians provided biological warfare coordination. Crystal Singer Thexani of the Zerathi managed energy weapon targeting. Deep Current Morthus of the Hydrans directed pressure-based attacks. The traditional powers found themselves fighting an enemy that thought in ways they couldn't predict or counter. Every time they adapted to one tactic, the Alliance switched to something completely different. Supreme Admiral Velthok attempted to salvage the situation by targeting Earth directly with his heaviest weapons. If he could destroy the human homeworld, the Alliance might collapse. His flagship led a concentrated assault toward the planet's surface. Captain Gonzalez intercepted him with a force of combined human and Allied vessels. The battle for Earth orbit became the turning point of the entire conflict. Admiral Velthok, Gonzalez broadcast on an open channel, "You came here to commit genocide because you couldn't accept that other species might be your equals. You're about to learn why that attitude is not just morally wrong, but strategically suicidal." The final assault on the Zenthari flagship demonstrated everything the Alliance had learned about cooperation. Human ships provided tactical coordination. Altarian vessels used biological weapons to disable life support systems. Zerathi ships overloaded the enemy's power grid. Hydran vessels applied pressure weapons to critical structural points. The flagship Infinite Dominion, pride of the Zenthari fleet, was systematically disabled without being destroyed. Its crew was left alive but helpless, surrounded by species they had considered inferior but who had proven themselves superior in every way that mattered. Admiral Anderson opened a communication channel to the entire attacking fleet. "This is Admiral Anderson to all forces. Your flagship has been disabled. Your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons have been neutralized by technologies you don't understand, wielded by species you never bothered to respect." He paused, letting the reality of their situation sink in. You have a choice. You can surrender and participate in building a new galactic order based on equality and cooperation. Or you can continue fighting and face complete destruction. The silence that followed lasted for several minutes. Then, one by one, ships throughout the attacking fleet began powering down their weapons and transmitting surrender signals. Supreme Admiral Velthok was the last to surrender, his voice filled with disbelief and defeat. "How is this possible? We had overwhelming numerical superiority. Our technology was advanced. Our tactics were proven." Captain Gonzalez answered him personally. "You had numbers, but we had unity. You had technology, but we had creativity. You had tactics, but we had justice. Most importantly, you fought to preserve a system based on oppression. We fought to build a system based on freedom. The Battle of Saul was over, but its implications would reshape the galaxy forever. The traditional powers had thrown everything they had at humanity and its allies, and they had been decisively defeated. But Admiral Anderson knew that the real work was just beginning. Winning the war was only the first step. Now they had to build the peace, and that would require even more cooperation and creativity than the fighting had. As reports flooded in from across the galaxy, Kim realized that this crisis would be the ultimate test of everything they had built. The old galactic powers had never faced a threat from outside their own space. They would have met it with traditional military force and probably would have been destroyed. The new alliance had different options. They had the combined knowledge and capabilities of hundreds of species working together. They had leaders who understood that strength came from cooperation rather than domination. Most importantly, they had learned to think creatively and adapt quickly to unexpected challenges. Ambassador Carter closed the communication with words that captured the spirit of the new era. Unknown Fleet. This is Ambassador Carter of the New Galactic Assembly. We don't know who you are or what you want, but we're not the same galaxy you might have encountered before. We're not a collection of competing empires. We're a unified alliance of free species who stand together. She paused, letting her words be transmitted toward the approaching fleet. If you come in peace, you'll find welcome among us. If you come as conquerors, you'll find that we've learned to fight as one. The choice is yours. Kim looked around the room at his colleagues, representing dozens of different species who had learned to work together despite centuries of mistrust and conflict. They had already proven that cooperation was stronger than domination. Now they would have the chance to prove it again, against an enemy that none of them had ever encountered before. The galaxy had changed. The question was whether it had changed enough to survive what was coming. But for the first time in galactic history, every species would face that challenge together, as equals and allies rather than masters and slaves. Whatever happened next, they would meet it united. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic community had truly begun. And in the deepest archives of the New Galactic Assembly, scholars were already recording the story that would become legend. The day the Deathworlders stopped playing fair and taught the galaxy that mercy was not weakness, cooperation was not surrender, and that the quiet ones might just be choosing to be kind. It was a lesson that would echo through the stars for millennia to come. Director Robert Kim walked through the corridors of what had once been Nexus Station, the heart of the old Galactic Council. The station had been completely transformed over the past 5 years. Where once there had been hierarchical seating, arrangements that reflected species power, there were now circular chambers where every representative sat as an equal. The New Galactic Assembly was nothing like its predecessor. Instead of a few dozen major powers making decisions for hundreds of smaller species, every intelligent civilization in the galaxy had a voice. The Altarians sat beside former Zenthari representatives. Zarathi crystal singers shared committees with ex-Kelvani traders. The change was so complete that visitors from the old era often didn't recognize the place. Kim paused at an observation window to watch one of the assembly sessions in progress. A young Zenthari named Velsara was presenting a proposal for agricultural cooperation between her people and the Altarians. Her great-grandfather had been one of the military commanders who ordered the destruction of human colonies. She was working to build the kind of partnership that would have been unthinkable under the old system. "Strange how things change," said a voice behind him. Kim turned to see Ambassador Lisa Carter approaching. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had served humanity through its transformation from galactic outcasts to leaders of the new order. "Ambassador Carter," Kim said with genuine warmth. I didn't expect to see you here today. Carter smiled. I wanted to see the final vote on the Mutual Defense Compact. After everything we've been through, I couldn't miss this moment. The Mutual Defense Compact was the culmination of years of careful diplomacy. Under its terms, any attack on one member species would be considered an attack on all. It wasn't just a military alliance, it was a commitment to the principle that no species should face extinction alone. They walked together toward the main assembly chamber, passing displays that showed the incredible changes that had swept the galaxy. Trade routes that had once enriched only the major powers now connected hundreds of worlds in mutually beneficial networks. Scientific research that had been hoarded by advanced species was now shared freely, leading to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the Council had accepted our original application? Carter asked. Kim considered the question seriously. Sometimes. But I think this outcome is better. If they had given us membership in the old system, we might have become part of the problem instead of the solution. In the assembly chamber, representatives from over 300 species were debating the final details of the compact. The discussion was passionate but respectful, with none of the condescension and power games that had characterized the old council. Speaker Velthera of the Altarians was addressing concerns from smaller species about the compact's military requirements. The strength of our alliance comes not from the size of our fleets, but from our willingness to stand together. A species with 10 ships who will come to your aid is worth more than an empire with 10,000 ships who will abandon you. The Zarathi representative, Crystal Singer Thexani, added her thoughts in the chiming tones of her people. Under the old system, we were told that our worth was measured by our usefulness to others. Under this compact, our worth is measured by our commitment to each other. Kim watched the proceedings with satisfaction. This was what they had fought for. A galaxy where disputes were resolved through discussion rather than domination, where cooperation was valued over conquest. The vote, when it finally came, was overwhelming. The Mutual Defense Compact was approved by 287 votes in favor, with only 15 abstentions and no votes against. Even former members of the old galactic powers supported the measure. As the session concluded, Kim made his way to a smaller meeting room where the real architects of the new order were gathering for their regular strategy session. Admiral Chris Anderson, now serving as Director of Interspecies Military Cooperation, was reviewing deployment schedules for the combined defense fleets. Captain Maria Gonzalez, who had become humanity's leading expert on diplomatic military intervention, was discussing the latest liberation mission. There were still pockets of the galaxy where the old ways persisted, but they were being steadily eliminated through a combination of diplomatic pressure and targeted assistance to oppressed populations. Dr. Michelle Davis, now head of the Interspecies Scientific Cooperation Council, was coordinating research projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Teams of humans, Altarians, Zarathi, and dozens of other species were working together on challenges that no single civilization could have solved alone. The integration is proceeding faster than we projected, Davis reported. The shared research stations are producing breakthrough discoveries almost monthly. The latest development in faster-than-light communication uses human creativity, Altarian biological engineering, and Zarathi energy manipulation. No single species could have achieved it? Anderson nodded approvingly. The military integration is going just as well. Combined fleets are training together throughout the galaxy. Former enemies are learning to fight side by side. We've had Some cultural conflicts, but nothing that couldn't be resolved through discussion. Gonzalez smiled. The psychological impact has been the most important factor. When species see former oppressors and former slaves working together as equals, it changes how they think about what's possible. Kim listened to the reports with a mixture of pride and amazement. 5 years ago, humanity had been dismissed as a minor species, suitable only for manual labor and peacekeeping duties. Now they were leading a galactic transformation that was reshaping how civilizations interacted with each other. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the assembly chamber. Ambassador Carter's image appeared on the wall screen, and her expression was serious. "Robert, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from outside the galaxy. Unknown species, unknown intentions, and they're heading directly toward our core worlds." Kim felt a familiar chill. How massive are we talking about? Preliminary estimates suggest over 500,000 vessels. Completely alien design, no response to communication attempts. They'll reach the outer defense perimeter in approximately 6 months. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Just when the galaxy had achieved peace and cooperation, a new threat was emerging from the void between galaxies. Anderson was the first to speak. "Well, I guess we're about to find out if our new alliance can handle an external threat." Gonzalez smiled grimly. "At least this time we won't be facing it alone." Kim activated the emergency communication system that connected all member worlds of the new Galactic Assembly. Within minutes, representatives from hundreds of species would be discussing how to respond to this new challenge. "This is Director Kim to all Assembly members," he broadcast. "We have an incoming external threat that requires immediate coordinated response. All military and scientific resources are to be placed on standby for Alliance deployment.